There's a trend that's been really popular on the internet lately. A lot of companies are doing it. Everyone's putting their dicks in different bags to try to find different places to suck money out of different IPs that are already established and made great by someone that actually knows what they're doing, and it's pissing me off. I've decided to dedicate my main channel to passion project videos where I do a hell of a lot of research and I don't expect to get a lot of views because it's something that I'm passionate about, but everyone else might not be, and that's what we're doing today, baby. We are talking about the perverted world of artistic vandalism. Art is something I am very passionate about, said everyone ever. But much like every single era of human history, the artist is always exploited by the businessman. The difference is, somehow in the past, the businessman still respected the art to some degree and wanted the art to be, well, art. We live in an era that has been so digitized with so many ADHD freak-out human creatures like me that will look at a headline, a title and thumbnail and make up your mind about everything and give them their ad revenue just by clicking on it, even if you instantly click off. The incentive of keeping the artistic value dwindles, and the incentive of just coming up with ways to push the product just keeps growing with more and more tendrils and facets. Now, this isn't going to be a 9-minute knee slapper video of me just sitting down and taking you by the backside and whapping you with my belt saying, "You dumb-ass consuming it's all your fault that they're doing this." And this isn't all gonna be a video of just me sitting here and complaining for 5 minutes straight. No, this is the hard-hitting, long-winded, hard evidence version of what the hell I'm talking about. Sorry uploads are slow on the main channel and I only post my 2 videos a day on Uxanor, which is more easy, lighthearted stuff. And if you don't like that, you may leave. But for those of you interested, we're going for the ride of a lifetime. We're talking about Avatar, Mulan, Velma, Dragon Maid, Lovely Complex, Berserk, Netflix's bastardization of Cleopatra, Sweet Baby Inc.'s blight on the gaming industry. We are going hard, we are going fast, and we are cutting the head off this Hydra. This isn't coming from the evil woke people are destroying the world. And this isn't coming from a perspective of relatively unpopular, slightly cringe adaptations. I'm going a step further. I'm not calling you out for being bad at your job. I am calling you out for being a malicious actor participating in artistic vandalism. Art used to be respected, and to fully understand what I am trying to say, I am going to give you an analogy based on a historical artistic war that took place in Florence, Italy, in the late 1400s and early 1500s. In the 1400s, the city of Florence in Italy was ruled over by the Medici family, an incredibly powerful political family that basically ran everything. Rich people that controlled everything, and all the little peons had to basically worship their toes. You know, kind of the way it works today with rich people. Eventually, there was a massive resistance in Florence and the people took power, and from the years 1501 to 1504, Michelangelo, you know, the artist sculptor guy that was based off the Ninja Turtle, that guy, he worked on the Statue of David, a legendary piece of art, a massive marble statue, until to this day, one of the most iconic pieces of sculpting history. The statue David was meant to represent, you know, David from the Bible who fought against Goliath, a massive force, but despite the fact that he was up against a literal giant, David, a little guy with a slingshot, was able to take that dude down. It was to represent how the little people, the resistance in Florence, were able to go up against the Medici family and actually win. They were actually able to take the city back. They were David and the Medici family was Goliath. This statue was erected, not with an erection, because goddamn, that is one tiny dong, but it was erected to represent the victory against the Medicis. Fast forward to 1559, in that same square in Florence, they painstakingly built the Fountain of Neptune by the commission of, you guessed it, Cosimo I de' Medici. That's right, the Medici family was absolutely back in power. It took 60 years, but ladies and gentlemen, they are back full force, as rich people tend to do. They crawl back up from the little gutters of the society that they make for themselves to control the herds and the masses. You know, it's pretty based, honestly. If I could do it, maybe I would, who knows? But they came back, and in order to show you that, no, we are going by the old ways, they went to build a massive statue of Neptune, or Poseidon, to represent the fact that this is a different culture than David. They didn't take down the David statue that symbolized their downfall, but instead they represented a completely different culture with the statue of Neptune. But they did better. Neptune's son in Greek mythology, Perseus, is also in that same square. He is across the square, directly in the eye line of Neptune in his fountain. And Perseus is standing there with his hand outstretched, holding the head of Medusa, because in Greek mythology, Perseus decapitated Medusa, just like how in Percy Jackson, Percy decapitated Medusa. Oh my god! And there Perseus stands with his head face down, because obviously, even if you're looking at Medusa's decapitated head, it could still turn you into stone. He's looking face down, and he's holding Medusa's head out wide. Iconically, though, that Medusa's head is exactly in the eye line of Michelangelo's statue of David. This statue was built 60 years later to represent the Medici's return to power over the city, and there is Percy, holding Medusa's head exactly in the eye line of the marble statue of David, because Medusa will turn you to stone if you look at it. This represents the seizure of power of the Medici family once again. This is a way to metaphorically cripple everything that the resistance meant by creating that statue of David. In the story, in that square, the resistance lost. However, they did it with completely respecting the integrity and the work of art that is Michelangelo's statue of David. This is artistic warfare, but even these people that had political reasons to destroy their opponent's art had so much respect for the art of someone that they didn't necessarily agree with in any way, that were political rivals that probably killed each other through the ages. When it came to a work of art, they would leave it untouched. It was a piece of the history of the world, and it spoke for its time period. It was an ideal that, yes, maybe 60 years out of date, and right now, the resistance doesn't exist anymore, but it was still something that existed and mattered to that time. An existing piece of history, and respect to it was warranted. I say this as a precursor because even though you may not like or hold disdain for someone else's piece of art, if you are tasked to work with it, whether you are adapting a cartoon into a live action, or you are localizing the translation of an anime, or you are a game company that is trying to get brownie points by putting different pieces of agenda in video games to sell better to different groups, you are people that are supposedly loving the thing you are doing. You are working in this field to create something that people enjoy out of something else that people enjoy. That is your job. And if the Medici family, a tyrannical government, had more self-restraint and respect for art than you do, well then that is saying something very, very wrong about society today. Now, with all that boring history crap out of the way, because I know you're all here to see me breathing down people's necks and spanking people's buttholes, I don't think there is any show that is almost as universally beloved as the cartoon Avatar: The Last Airbender. A legitimate, unanimously acclaimed masterpiece that no one hates at all in any way. And of course, you know where this story is ending. It got a Netflix adaptation, bringing it into the world as a live-action anime adaptation. Jolly. Thankfully, they didn't give Sokka dialogue that made it sound like he was sucking on Skibbity Toilet Riz every single sentence or two like they like to do in all these other adaptations. Unfortunately, however, they absolutely cucked every single character plotline as well as the major themes for the entire series. Now, everyone knew this was gonna be bad when the actual original writers of the Avatar cartoon walked away and didn't want to have their input exist in the actual live action. That is a bad freaking sign. But even more than that, before actually releasing the very first episode of the Avatar, they sat down and they were like, Avatar was a little problematic back in its day. As a cartoon, there were a lot of problematic themes. For example, Sokka was sexist. Yes, you heard that correctly. Also, we want to make it a lot better. We want to improve on it. So we're gonna make it a lot more Game of Thrones like. Little did the audience knew, they were talking about season 8 of Game of Thrones. This was obviously the biggest red flag in the world. I know Matt Owens, the showrunner of the One Piece live action adaptation. He would never say something like that at all. You see, because he actually loved One Piece when he made that adaptation. You'd think that would be literally the bar on the floor for adapting. You know, to actually like the thing you're adapting. Actually, the bar on the floor, which I didn't even think was a bar, was actually, you know, watching or playing the source material, which could be said about the freaking Netflix people. At least they watched Avatar. The people doing the live-action Halo show never even played Halo. But getting back to Avatar for just a brief moment, a lot of people complain that the Netflix Avatar is a bad adaptation, and I've seen a wide variety of reasons as to why it's a bad adaptation. Some of the crowd likes to sit here and say that they're focusing on theatrics a lot more than they're actually focusing on plot. And while I do agree with that complaint, I think think it's only the tip of the iceberg. They go in full detail to show badass fight scenes every single time you turn around, but unfortunately, the badass fight scenes have, like, no weight behind them. Whereas Uncle Iroh drinking hot leaf juice in Avatar, the cartoon, is incredible. As an example for this complaint, I think my favorite would be the fact that you got character moments flying out the window in order to make up for it with spectacle? Let me introduce you to a little man by the name of Zuko. Zuko, this dude, scar on his face, handsome fella, that's rough buddy sayer extraordinaire, is, in my opinion, probably one of the best written fictional characters in history. This man's character arc should be the blueprint for character arcs going forward. He is a legend among legends, and I would be hard-pressed to find anyone that has a better written character arc over the course of 3 seasons than my man Zuko. It is meticulously crafted how in Avatar Season 1 of the cartoon, he's fighting to impress his father. He is fighting for his honor. He must do things because it is what his duty demands of him. And the way he evolves into Season 2 of being someone uncertain, and into Season 3, someone that actually has to remake himself. Literal beautiful character writing. It's fantastic. Mwah. I could give you an hour-long video just on this one man alone. But I think one of the most iconic scenes to define exactly who he was as a person in the very beginning of the Avatar show was the way he got banished from the Fire Nation. He has been tasked on retrieving the Avatar, and until he does that, he is banished from his homeland by his own father. Now, in the Avatar cartoon, the way this went down was, he pulled some shit, his dad got pissed at him, said he would have to do an Agni Kai, which is a basically mano-a-mano fire duel, because he disrespected a general. Now, this is pretty basic stuff, and you'd think Zuko would need to go up against the general that he disrespected. The big shocker is, he actually had to go up against his father, Fire Lord Ozai. Basically, the main giga threat of the series. This dude right here, the main antagonist. He is the Voldemort, the Hitler of Avatar. And when Zuko realizes that the person he's gonna be going up against in this fire duel is his actual father, he decides, I'm not gonna fight you, you're my father. I love you, I respect you, I won't fight you. And his father, completely disappointed by the fact that Zuko wasn't willing to fight him, branded him as a traitor, and sent him into the cold, harsh outside, banished him from his homeland. It's an incredibly powerful and iconic moment in Avatar, I think, and it also defines exactly who Zuko really is. He acts all tough and acts like, you know, he must do shit for honor and duty, but in actuality, his own value of honor and duty is so much more than the honor and duty that he keeps saying and spouting that he needs to do. This defines who he is at the very beginning of the story, and I think this is the building block that he builds on literally throughout the entire shit. The Avatar live action, because they want to replace emotions with theatrics, decided, you know what? We're not going to do any of that garbage. We're going to have Zuko fight his dad, not actually refuse to fight him. He refuses for like 2 seconds, and then he just fights him, literally cucking that part of the story. Okay, but if he fights him, why does he get banished? I thought he got banished because he wasn't willing to fight him, and it was humiliating because he was in an Agni Kai fire duel and he refused to fight. That's why he got banished. But if he actually did fight him and you got your theatrics, why did he get banished? The Netflix guys thought of that, and they decided, you know what? We're gonna cuck this show a little bit further. They ended up banishing him because he was gonna win the fight, and he ended up holding himself back? So you're telling me 13-year-old schnook Zuko was gonna win the fight against the Avatar Voldemort in the prologue? But no! They ended up kicking him out anyway. And they were like, oh, you must go because he held himself back from killing his father or something cringe like that. Honestly, makes no sense, and you throw Zuko's entire character arc out the window for the sake of theatrics. So that's the theatric argument, and it's good. Other complaints of the show include spreading the woke agenda. And while normally I would be like, okay, dude, you're going crazy here. Come on. They're so right. They're literally so right. It was literally in their mantra, the fact that they wanted to remove petty sexism from the show. So in this segment of the Avatar segment of the video, this is a very long video, but I want to be thorough here because, again, passion project, diary shit, whatever. Today we're going to talk about how they absolutely bastardized my boy Sokka. So, when they said that there was lots of sexism stuff in the original Avatar, they were obviously talking about Sokka, because this man the entire time was talking about how, I am a man, I am a warrior, who are you? You're just a little girl, you're not a warrior, I'm a man, I'm a Giga Chad, yeah, me, looks maxing, mewing to the max, I got skibbity toilet riz. That's the second time I said that in this video, I'm a little worried about myself. But the point is, Sokka went from being in his Andrew Tate arc all the way from being an absolute respecter of women, like me, who respects women a lot. In fact, shout out to women. Shout out to women. Yeah, I said it. I'm not afraid to say it.
Women.
Sokka's character arc throughout the entire Avatar was also absolutely brilliant. He went from a man that was confident in being a man. The man needs to be the warrior. And he ended up learning that supplies 90% of the overpowered cast are females. You got freaking Katara, the most overpowered waterbender in the story. You got freaking Toph, the most overpowered earthbender in the story. You got Azula, the most overpowered firebender in the story. Believe it or not, of every nation that wasn't literally genocided, the most powerful character in that group is the freaking famine. That was a mix between female and whammon. I was losing it a little bit there. And he goes through this realization that, yeah, duh, whammon can be warriors. And yeah, duh, warrior doesn't equal just being a Giga Chad on the battlefield. He was the strategist. He was the guy that was manipulative in his tactics. He was someone that worked so hard to gain the trust of his colleagues to the point that Toph followed him into the air. A blind woman who could sense people through the ground followed him into the air and jumped off of a blimp. He is someone that was actually able to be the leader of his group. He was a warrior because he knew how to command people. He saved the freaking world, man! And that was without powers and without generic being powerful. I think that the original Avatar cartoon did the whole trope of powerful whammon so freaking well, it's just ironically tragic that Netflix felt like they somehow needed to outdo that. I feel like as far as shows that respect whammon go, Avatar was literally at the absolute peak, the zenith of that. And having a character like Sokka undermine whammon literally proved the point that whammon are awesome better. So by removing all the sexism out of the whole Sokka story, you're left with a shell of a man. You see, Sokka's character arc in the actual Netflix show is so different than his character arc in the actual cartoon. You see, in the cartoon, Sokka's character arc was going from being someone who believed that a warrior was about strength and men were strong and therefore needed to be warriors. He went to someone who believed that everyone had a role to play. Whammon could be warriors on the battlefield, and men could be warriors in their mind, strategic leaders, and people with great senses of humor, because at least the Avatar cartoon understands that whammon aren't actually funny. Like, they're pretty basic. That was a joke! That was a joke! That was a joke! But the point is, that's such powerful character development and such a good message. Ironically enough, Sokka goes through an entire character development from point A to point Z in the Netflix show within season 1 alone, which is already a red flag. Double red flag! The character arc is absolute shit, and the lesson is also absolute shit. Sokka was never sexist. He never looked down at whammon at all in the actual story. He never believed that men needed to be warriors in the Netflix show, because culture, am I right? Sokka was a character in the Netflix show that wanted to be a warrior and believed that warrior was strength. And you know what? He was proven right. Warrior is all about being strong. So when he came up with all of these mechanical engineer things, well, that wasn't being a warrior because that's pussy shit. Sokka had compassion and love and all that stuff. And compassion and love and shit? Pfft, pussy shit. Sokka's character arc in the Netflix show was realizing that he wasn't cut out to be a warrior. Which is ironic because you'd think that that's literally the opposite of what his character arc was in Avatar the cartoon. But they did that. And in fact, to keep harping on this agenda-pushing business instead of actually worrying about rounding out your characters, the Katara arc is the absolute opposite. Katara was overpowered the whole fucking time. She was the main weapon of literally the whole freaking show, and she had zero emotions. It was almost like the fact that Katara from the cartoon, who was a completely caring, lovable, compassionate, and motherly figure, someone who loved and someone who trusted so much, she became a shell of her former self in the actual Netflix show. Instead of trusting Jet and being heartbroken when Jet ended up being a terrorist like in the cartoon, she semi-trusted Jet, and when Jet turned out to be a terrorist, she was like, I knew I shouldn't trust you. And her heart wasn't broken. Like, what are you doing? What, are whammon not allowed to have compassion anymore? Are whammon not allowed to be tricked or something? At the very end of the first season of the Netflix Avatar, when she goes up to the waterbending master, and the waterbending master says that I will not teach you because you are a woman. You know, like kind of like he does in the cartoon. The major difference is, in the cartoon, he ends up seeing the Netflix that Katara has and realizing that Katara's grandma was actually his betrothed. And he ends up realizing the error in his ways and says, you know what, I could help, I'm going to teach you waterbending. And Katara actually managed to get a master. She proved him wrong. She was a girl boss in the original Avatar cartoon, and that was dope. In the Netflix cartoon, again, for the sake of, what, agenda? They decided to completely artistically butcher this entire sequence. So Katara doesn't end up learning from this waterbending master guy. Instead, she decides to go to all the women of the water tribe, the healer ladies, and was like, "Women of the water tribe, for far too long have we been suppressed. Rise up, females!" And the women healers with zero combat experience end up on the front lines. You did not help these women. Then ironically, towards the end of that sequence, she goes up against Zuko, like she does kind of in the cartoon, and she ends up being OP. She freezes Zuko, it's all dope, and Zuko's like, "Wow, you finally found yourself a master, didn't you?" And Katara says the worst words you could ever hear in a modern movie. Katara says, "I'm my own master. I don't need no man." And it was like, oh, just put a bullet in my head right now. Holy shit. Literally butchering every single character arc. That's aside from everyone hating on Aang, all right? I didn't want to go down the Aang rabbit hole because that was obvious. Aang in the cartoon was like this, literal child who like did things that took him off course and also had moments of realizations that were incredibly epic, whereas the Netflix Aang was just uber serious the entire time. Like, I could go down this rabbit hole for every single character of the Netflix show, but that's not really the point here. The point here was made very, very clear, talking about the entire main cast of the Avatar story. This is artistic vandalism. Avatar the cartoon was an actual piece of art. It was beautiful. Every single character arc was written meticulously with reasons why they were written the way they were. If you just start poking and prodding, plucking out pieces of different characters in different moments, you're going to end up with a different show. And if you need to keep coming up with glue and hasty duct taping in order to keep the scenes alive and the pieces in order, you're going to end up with a completely different story. The Netflix Avatar is a shell of its former self. I understand they wanted to adapt it for an adult audience, so maybe following kids around would be stupid. So instead, we're just going to have these kids around, but they're all going to be mega mature the entire time. I understand that maybe in today's landscape, having a character like Sokka looking down at women wouldn't exactly make him a super lovable character. So let's just completely neuter his character traits and just make him realize, I'm not a warrior because I have a big heart. Maybe at the end of the day, having Katara's master end up just teaching her because he realized she was right would be cringe somehow, and it would be more based and inspiring for her to just realize all that shit herself. And the big kicker is, Aang never practiced any other bending throughout the entire first season. Do you know why the different Avatar seasons in the cartoon are called Book 1, Water, Book 2, Earth, and Book 3, Fire? Because Avatar, the master of all four elements, learns a different bending technique and bending style in each season. Each one is a different focus. But in Book 1, Water, of the Netflix show, believe it or not, Aang never waterbended. Again, this is not a long-winded rant, pasty review about the Netflix Avatar adaptation. This is a small microcosm of the much greater disease that we are about to be discussing. I wanted to discuss it in this much detail with the different characters and stuff to explain to you why I really feel like it is artistic vandalism. It's taking characters that have personalities and tropes and character traits, and it's butchering them. It's butchering them for whatever reason that reason might be. Either it's for accessibility, or for it's a different medium, or perhaps it's even to push some sort of agenda. Ultimately, it is meaningless. Ultimately, you are cutting the penis off the statue of David because it would be too vulgar for modern audiences. And that is a crime. Now, I'm not going to be covering every bad adaptation ever created by man, or we will never leave here. I am only going to be covering various different adaptations in different fields and in different time periods in order to properly realize and recognize the fundamental flaws in this entire situation. Before getting into the obvious harm, in my opinion, of artistic vandalism, first I need to make you acknowledge the fact that artistic vandalism exists, and it is happening, and it's a disease. And what better way to do that than through Disney's absolute abominations? And the best way to do that is to go back in time to 1998 when Mulan was released. Mulan is one of the greatest movies of all time. It is easily in my top 5 animated movies ever made, and it is an honest-to-God classic. It's something everyone should watch and everyone would appreciate. It's something that can combine everyone's appreciation for a medium, whether you are a woke or an anti-woke. I don't know what any of these words mean anymore, but I am using them, goddammit. Now, this isn't going to be a whole-ass Mulan review, just like I'm not going to do a whole-ass Little Mermaid review in a few minutes when I finish with this segment, but I really need to hammer home a couple of ideas that the original Mulan was definitely trying to get across, and exactly how Disney bastardized those ideas in the 2020 Mulan remake, the same way they did that with the freaking Little Mermaid or original to remake absolute massacre. But I'm not talking about bad adaptations. I hope you recognize that from the Avatar segment. This is not talking about someone who had a duty and messed up with that duty. While I do think that's grounds for going crazy, that is absolutely not the purpose of this video. I'm talking about the malicious vandalism of a piece of art, and I think that's much more important and pervasive for today's society. The first scene in the original Mulan was Mulan needed to feed chickens. She was told to feed chickens. She's an obedient girl. She respects and loves her father and family, and she therefore will feed the chickens. But she is an innovative little bastard. And what's she gonna do? Well, she's gonna tie a freaking bone to a dog to have the dog chase the bone and have a torn sack of flour at the back of the dog and chicken feed, and the dog will run around and all the chickens will end up getting fed with their innovative bullshit, and it'll annoy the dad, and the dad's gonna try to be praying there in his little temple, but goddamn, there's a freaking dog chasing a bone with the chicken feed everywhere. Now there's chickens everywhere. It's a catastrophe. Now, this does such a good job at establishing what Mulan's character is as a little girl. She is obedient and respectful. You know, she's doing her chores, feeding the chickens. All right, that's pretty good. She is innovative as shit, right? She came up with this whole dog shenanigan thing, which was pretty hilarious in a way to save time and effort and come up with this really cool way to do things. And she's not overly that careful when it comes to cultural relevance and stuff. Like, for example, she disrespected the dad's prayer ceremony thing, whatever. She hammers down these three themes literally throughout the entirety of the story. At some point, there is this massive uprising. The Huns are coming. They're gonna wipe out China. China's in jeopardy. And because of this, there is a mandatory draft where every household in all of China has to send one man, one dude, bro, one guy from each household to fight in this massive war. It's a mandatory draft in order to hopefully keep China alive, and so China isn't absolutely ransacked, pillaged, and destroyed by the Huns, where they would destroy the culture and they would kill the emperor. All in all, pretty bad shit, and they have to go ahead and do that stuff. So, because she loves her family and father so much, she makes the sacrifice. She doesn't know how to fight. She's not a dude, but she will still go ahead because her father is sick, and because of this asinine rule that one able-bodied man from every household doesn't even need to be able-bodied, the sick dad would have to go stand up and fight in an army in a war that he will absolutely, positively die in. He will not contribute, he will just die, because that is what the culture demands. So she will sacrifice herself, knowing that she can't fight, but for the honor of her household and for the sake of her father, she'll take his sword and armor, and she will stand in his place on the battlefield. This shows such a powerful character, someone who's not an inherently badass, epic, god-tier fighter, but someone who's still willing to do everything for the sake of her father. Now, you see the innovation in her strategies throughout the entire show. And the entire movie is not about the fact that, well, she is a woman and therefore she is awesome and she can defeat the Huns in one-on-one combat. That's really not what the story's about, actually, at all, believe it or not. She doesn't win a single fight that way at all. In fact, in the very beginning of the training regimen, the chief commander general guy gives them 2 weights and tells them to climb a pillar, and every single person fails to climb the freaking pillar. They all fail, one after the other after the other. But Mulan does not give up. She tries again and again, and she innovates. She uses the weights as some sort of wedge and uses it as a pulley system to give herself a frictional advantage and use the weights to climb to the top of the pillar, using the actual challenge part of the training to her advantage to get there. Incredibly mind-boggling genius stuff. Later, when they fight the Huns, instead of using their one pathetic, puny little missile thing to shoot at the Huns, which realistically would do absolutely nothing, she decides to steal it and have the tenacity to shoot it at a mountain, causing an avalanche and wiping out the Hun forces. When the Emperor gets captured at the end of the movie by the Huns, instead of trying to get some sort of battering ram and blast the door down, she comes up with this other goofy, gimmicky strategy where she dresses up all the dudes as women instead of the women as dudes. Big twist. And they all woo the the guards, and the guards are like, oh shit, they're such sexy women. And of course, they were not women at all, and they get absolutely obliterated. Listen, I'm not saying that this would work in modern day combat, but I'm also not saying it wouldn't work in modern day combat, god damn it. The point of the show is, she is willing to throw away the cringe parts of her day-to-day society. The idea that, well, sick man has to fight in the war. The idea that, well, she's a woman, therefore she's useless. A lot of these concepts that, honestly, you saw she did contribute a hell of a lot, and she was able to throw away the parts of society that she didn't like, and she wasn't willing to be crushed down into some box where she was forced to become the person that she wasn't, going on dates from that matchmaker lady in the very beginning. And it's through her innovation, and through her novelty, and through her tenacity that she was able to make it through every situation unscathed. Well, maybe not super unscathed, but she made it through. The Emperor looks at her and says, China's destroyed. You lied to everyone. You are in fact a woman. And you saved my life and China. And that is such a beautiful encapsulation of exactly what the story is. Throwing off the weight and what society expects you to be, and be yourself. You're right, she's not as physically strong as all the freaking soldiers out there. And you know what? That doesn't matter. But because of her innovation, she is able to not just make a mark, but save her country. Beautiful story. Literally the most progressive piece of media probably ever made in 1998, when it wasn't trying to shove shit down your throats. Enter modern day Mulan. Disney came back to shit out Mulan 2020, and from the very first scene of the movie to the very, very end, you see exactly what went wrong. They had a message to promote, and they built the story around the message. Now, as I've already established, Mulan, literally the most progressive piece of media of all time. But they came back and they literally reanimated it, but the necromancer had a speech impediment and brought down some half-deluded zombie from the grave that literally is nothing but a shadow of its former self. The very first scene of the Mulan 2020 live-action remake is Mulan is a freaking douchebag. She's not doing her duties. She's not obedient or honorable at all. She's standing on a roof. She slips off the roof. She grabs a bamboo stick and freaking becomes a ninja. She flips down like a hidden leaf ninja in Naruto. Absolute god-tier fighter. And then when they start demanding people come to the mandatory draft because China is in danger, well, she is literally the strongest fighter in the entire country. So you can bet your booty she's gonna be there to prove herself. And when she's standing there among the ranks of her fellow military men, acting like she's a dude, and the guy gives a speech to the people, and the speech is, "Do not lie." And she's like, "Oh shit, I'm literally lying right now." And all of a sudden, the battle is not about finding your place in an oppressive society or realizing who you actually are, using who you can be to its fullest potential. It's literally not about that at all. It's suddenly about whamming strong. And unfortunately, that is literally the antithesis of what the original Mulan was actually trying to promote. It's because of this ass-backwards mindset that they went into this story and completely butchered the shit out of it. Not a single character thread was actually thought through from one moment to the other. Mulan, who was an absolutely brilliant, innovative fighter in the original Mulan, became a just random strong soldier lady in the new one. She didn't do a single innovative thing in the entire Disney remake movie. They absolutely cucked her, and in turn, literally made women look worse than the original did, despite the fact that their entire message was women strong, and women should be fighting, because women in fact strong. And that guy's stupid, because he don't think women strong. And don't think The Little Mermaid is free from literally the exact same criticism. The women strong thing is so prevalent in modern day Disney that they completely need to destroy and rewrite history to make it look like old Disney movies kind of followed this mentality. Now, women are strong. That's a true thing. And the beauty of The Little Mermaid is Ariel was strong. Maybe she wasn't strong that she personally solved every problem that ever happened in the history of time, but she was strong-willed. I don't think there is a better story about an expression of identity than the original Little Mermaid. Ironic as it sounds, it is the most freaking based, soul-searching, identity-finding piece of media you could think of. Women mermaid lady is born as a fish person, however identifies as a land person, and manages to fulfill her dream. Like, holy crap, Lois, this is literally freaking amazing! It's almost like when you're not trying to shove an identity down someone's throats and you're just trying to create a brilliant piece of art, suddenly it ends up becoming a progressive piece of media that actually inspires millions of people across the world. Instead of Disney remake of Little Mermaid, where Shocker, that doesn't come across at all. Let me give you a couple of story beats for original Little Mermaid and why this is so powerful when it comes to a quest to find your identity. Ariel's mom was killed by humans, and therefore Ariel's dad, super anti-human, mega anti-human racist guy, because, bro, they killed his wife. They literally killed his wife. He was a very mad dude. So anytime he would even hear the topic of humans, he was like, nuh-uh, sir, don't want any of that. Ariel, of course, was very intrigued by humanity and wanted to try to live on the surface and all that, and she ended up rebelling against her father and finding a path for herself, etc., etc. At some point, Prince Guy of the humans was dying and it was rough, and she saved his life. Epic whammon moment, she saved his life, she's so based and red-pilled, and she's goddamn the most progressive whammon alive. Anyway, come toward the end of the movie, Ursula gets incredibly powerful. She's freaking big. She becomes Cthulhu of the Disneyverse. And you know what happens? The dude, the prince guy, that she saved his life. He risks his life. He gets on his ship and he impales Ursula with his ship, saving the entire underwater community and all of Atlantis. All of a sudden, Ariel's dad, Triton, he's like, wait a second, you know, humans aren't all bad. That guy is a good human. Just like we have good fish people and bad fish people, like me and Ursula, we also have good humans and bad humans, like the prince guy and also that random human guy that killed Ariel's mom. So Ariel actually manages to convince her dad, fulfill her dreams, and find her identity, going to the human world, and it's beautiful, right? Like, honest to God, beautiful story of self-expression, finding identity, and crushing major boundaries between father and child, and also boundaries between races that only saw a fraction of what the other race was about, and therefore decided to come up with this whole weird mind conglomerate of what they actually are, discriminating against them based on one stereotype that you saw. Beautiful story, mega progressive. God, I love how progressive this is. I'm using that word as a meme, I'm sure you understand. Enter modern day Disney. Holy shit, it makes no sense at all. Like, the actual plot doesn't even make sense. They remake The Little Mermaid, resuscitating the corpse of the original, trying to give CPR to a dead guy. Yes, she saves the prince, just like she saved the prince from drowning in the actual original. However, when Ursula shows up and Ursula's all dangerous and stuff, you know what happens? Well, guess what? She saves the prince again. She, the lady who's living in the sea her entire life and has zero idea how to freaking pilot a ship, jumps in the boat, controls the boat, and impales Ursula with the boat. She does it. He doesn't repay her. No, she does literally everything. Dude, mega cucked for the entire movie. Her, though, bro, she knows how to freaking steer a ship. Basic shit. She jumps in, she saves the day, she kills Ursula, and her dad is like, yes, I accept you for who you are. What? The whole idea of the dad accepting her for who he was is because the dude is the guy who risked his life. The human risked his life to save Atlantis. That's why that happened. But the plot doesn't even make sense. Forget the messages that are stupid and skewed. The plot itself is garbage. And it's on purpose. Now, I don't think they made the movie bad on purpose, but they did make the movie different on purpose. They tried to change enough little details of it to fit some kind of weird agenda that's being pushed. And you know what gets sacrificed for the sake of this agenda? Art. Art gets sacrificed. And not just are you undermining your own art, but you're undermining a beautiful piece of art that was beloved by millions for decades. But anyway, I've delved deep enough down the adaptation rabbit hole, and I think you properly understand exactly what I'm saying here. I think I made myself incredibly clear with these examples of Avatar and Disney stuff and all that. And let's stop talking about adaptations for a second. Let's talk about taking an existing IP and absolutely putting it through a blender. Now, it would be remiss of me to talk about Disney bastardizing and destroying beloved IPs and franchises without mentioning the actual GOAT that was massacred by Disney. I could not make a video like this without talking about what Disney did to Star Wars. Star Wars needs no introduction as one of the most beloved IPs of all time. Your parents' generation loved Star Wars and your generation loved Star Wars, but your kids' generation probably won't even watch it. Today I'm not talking about all the Acolyte stuff and the drama and the diss tracks that the stars of the Acolyte released, talking about why if you hate modern Star Wars, you probably just hate women and gay people. That's really not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about the awful business practices of Disney where they would extort certain companies into showing their films instead of Tarantino films in order to one-up the competition because Disney has insane extortion money. Staying within the realm of the video's topic, we are talking today about plain and simple artistic vandalism. And while I could be making a full hour to 2 hour long video on the downfall of Star Wars, which might be on the back burner right now for a separate day, Staying within the topic, Disney bastardized Star Wars more than your average Game of Thrones character bastardized their children by sleeping with their sister. The original Star Wars trilogy was the heartbreaking story of a boy who lived under an oppressive empire and fought his way to create a free world for the people around him. The prequel era of Star Wars was a glorious tale of how freedom dies, showing you this glorious, spanning democracy that's lasted for 1,000 years, and due to the evil machinations of one of the greatest written villains of all time, Jar Jar Binks, democracy died to a speech given by Darth Sidious, telling the world that this is the first galactic empire to thunderous applause as they applaud a sycophant who gained power and destroyed a democracy. To this day, Order 66 is one of the most heartbreaking moments in cinema history, and the fall of Anakin to the dark side will be remembered to everyone. Obi-Wan sits there and says, "You are the chosen one, you are my brother, Anakin, I loved you," and my heart breaks. Even though this was the end that we all saw coming because we all saw the original trilogy. We knew the democracy wouldn't last. We knew Anakin would end up becoming Lord Vader. But like a modern-day Greek tragedy, we witnessed that descent and that entire situation unfold before our very eyes, and we could do nothing about it. The Clone Wars TV show was a brilliant way to evolve the entire story and get you to that point where you recognize the tragedy of Order 66, not just from the perspective of the Jedi that are killed, but also from the clones who have their very freedom stripped from them, which ultimately is the overarching theme of the actual Star Wars trilogy and the Star Wars prequel trilogy. How freedom dies, and it's to thunderous applause. Iconic characters, amazing fight scenes, everything that a modern blockbuster hit needs to be. And then Disney realized they could get their grubby little Mickey Mouse hands on it, and they could put their dick in the entire mouth of the gaping hole of the Death Star. Now, as you probably know if you're watching this video, because my channel is pretty shadow banned these days, and you're probably only watching this because you came here from my second channel, I have been doing lore dives into a lot of different facets of the internet recently. I've specifically focused on Star Wars and Warhammer and like a lot of other gritty sci-fi type shiz. And learning about the lore of Star Wars has been an eye-opening experience. As a kid, I watched the original trilogy and I watched the prequel trilogy. I've watched a couple episodes of the Clone Wars here and there, and that's about it. And I still really liked Star Wars. But now, after understanding the greater lore, the 1,000 novels written about the Star Wars franchise, that's right, 1,400-page books about the various eras of Star Wars history, the Old Republic, the High Republic, the freaking Star Wars Legends timeline. Did you know in the very first of the prequel films where Ki-Adi-Mundi, you know, dickhead Jedi guy, the guy who's not making fun of the guy, his head just literally looks like a big penis, that dude goes and tells everyone, "But a Sith, we haven't seen a Sith in 1,000 years. Did you know why? Because 1,000 years ago, there was a massive war between the Jedi and the Sith, and the Sith, under the rule of Darth Bane, the most goated of the goats, this dude established the rule of two. There was an entire race of Sith. There was an army of Sith. There was a massive cataclysmic war that spanned hundreds of novels worth of material. Eventually, when the Sith were at the very brink of defeat, Darth Bane made this whole rule of two shtick, and that's why, to this day, only two there are, a master and an apprentice. There's so much content that could be done there, or if you go even further back to Valkorion, the Sith Emperor, or Darth Revan, or Darth Nihilus. Every single one of these characters equally or more iconic than the most iconic Sith Lords you could think of within the current Disney canon of Star Wars. Did you know that Darth Revan was a Jedi who single-handedly started an entire war against Mandalore, then became a Sith, then became a Jedi? As a Sith, he destroyed the Jedi. As a Jedi, he destroyed the Sith. He was eventually killed. He force-willed himself back to life to destroy the Sith Emperor, but the Sith Emperor was already dead. So he made it his mission to try to resurrect the Sith Emperor in order to properly kill him himself. This was so terrifying, the Jedi and the Sith had to team up to stop Darth Revan from resurrecting Valkorion, the Sith Emperor. This is like one of the craziest storylines of all time, and Disney would never ever touch it. They would rather somehow Palpatine returned. Now, Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, but they want to, do something with the established characters like Luke Skywalker and all those other lovely characters that they completely bastardized in their sequel trilogy that didn't exist as far as I care. Well, ironically, in the Legends timeline, there actually is an entire sequel era to the actual trilogy of Star Wars 2. Luke Skywalker and his children and different enemies and foes that they had to fight throughout the years, introducing Lovecraftian entities into the Star Wars universe like Abeloth. And believe it or not, in the Legends timeline of Star Wars, they actually did not absolutely cuck Luke Skywalker. He was still an absolute badass character. The hero of so many people's childhoods, the hero of so many people's timelines that they got to witness him start off as this little guy on some sand planet, which I hate because sand is coarse, rough, and gets everywhere. But this dude still took down an empire, an oppressive empire. He is an absolute mad lad. Well, now we have two things we could do with this character. Well, option one, we can give him an entire Legends timeline of him still being an awesome and show you how his family is pretty epic and great and stuff, and give him new trials and tribulations, a different generation that he has to raise. He needs to refound the Jedi Order. Pretty awesome, pretty badass stuff, honestly. That's pretty great. What's the second option, you're probably thinking? There can't possibly be a second option. Well, the second option is making him a hobo drinking walrus titty milk on a random planet and then die off screen in a pathetic way so you can follow other characters. Now, that is not how you treat a hero, Disney. Well, at least there's Han Solo, right? Nope! Han Solo got divorced and he was all sad and he became a hobo too. Bro, we got the Indiana Jones treatment. We'll hobify all of our favorite characters and he'll die in a pathetic way that was incredibly epically foreshadowed that he would just die in a lame way. Yeah, the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, in my canon, not real. Doesn't exist. It never happened. Disney never bought Star Wars. But aside from disrespecting the very characters, and aside from doing away with a glorious franchise with a brilliant theming, as I've mentioned, about the death of freedom, you know what the major theme is of the new sequel trilogy? Well, I don't! There is no major overarching theme. It does not tap into the potential that Star Wars laid at all. The theme is, oh yeah, Whammon character? Kinda awesome, ain't she? Bet you've never thought of a strong Whammon character in Star Wars before. I mean, aside from Luke's daughter in the Legends timeline of Star Wars. What are you doing, Disney? Now, ironically, despite all these incredibly powerful characters and interesting backstories and different lore eras of Star Wars that could have definitely been adapted in one way or another by people that actually had some sort of passion for the Star Wars series when they wrote this shit, Disney decided to do away with all of it and come up with their own stories. It's unbelievable. The audacity and disrespect this Mickey Mouse piece of shit feels like when they just stick their dick in things and claim them as their own. Borderline molesting pieces of art that are written with passion and love by previous generations and amazing writers to create their own little factory of shit, putting more and more poop on the trash assembly line as they shove it out to the masses and try to appeal to things like audience demographics instead of actually making some sort of actually good story. Even characters that only showed up in the movie for 20 minutes, like General Grievous, you could give him an entire TV show based on the depth of his backstory. Again, I do lore dives on my second channel, so I've been learning about all this shit, and the more I recognize how great the Star Wars extended universe is, if you look at the Legends canon, the sadder it is that you see how badly Disney fumbled the bag. It's not like there was no more content and their adaptations were shit. There was more content, and they decided instead of adapting good content, they would just come up with their own little fart childs, decanonize hundreds of hours of work and 1,000 novels of content, just decanonized like Thanos snapped them out of existence, purely for the sake of creating a new canon where everything is shit now. This is like the Rick and Morty butt universe where they open a portal and they end up in a universe, but it's all butts everywhere. This is what Disney did to Star Wars. Now, to add insult to injury, aside from making just absolutely shit properties and terrible shows, instead of respecting, the actual artists that made Star Wars what it is, because for sake, Disney didn't, Disney is also disrupting and disrespecting the little fragment of Star Wars canon that they kept as canon. The irony is, Disney came out here with the big red marker and crossed off 99% of the Star Wars canon, leaving only the movies as basically the canon and the Clone Wars TV show. And then they disrespect their own canon. The big rage these days on the interwebs is The Acolyte, this absolutely dumpster fire of a TV show that Disney likes telling everyone that insults the Acolyte. It's like, oh, you're only insulting this because you actually hate women and gay people. It's not because it's an absolute dumpster fire piece of shit content that no one could possibly enjoy. Editor, play the clip, power of one, power of two, power of many, please.
The power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
Thank you, editor. I rest my case. That one scene alone will be immortalized to meme status of absolute dog shit content. Whoever put that together unironically thought they were making something good. Bro thought he was cooking with that one. Can we please, power of one, power of two, power of many of you, hit that like button and subscribe to this video right now. Thank you. But the tragic irony is, instead of even making a good show, which they didn't, they made a terrible show. I mean, what did we expect? Well, we expected them to at least respect the little fragment of Star Wars that they kept as canon, right? Remember how I mentioned to you earlier how I subtly implanted the foreshadowing in all of your minds of how Ki-Adi-Mundi, penis head general Jedi guy, you know, not because he necessarily is a penis or anything. I'm just, his head is just a big cock. That guy, I especially made you focus on that guy when he said the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, which is a very long time. Yeah, I was dapping my boy up because in The Acolyte, which takes place 100 years before the original Star Wars prequels, yeah, there are Sith running around killing Jedi, like lots of them. You don't have any of these Master Yoda moments when Order 66 happened where he clutches his heart and drops his cane. Nope, none of that. Yoda's not even in the show. You know why? You know why Yoda's not in the show? They wanted Yoda in the show. They couldn't afford Yoda. Yoda was like, no, don't want to be here, bro. And they were like, all right, whatever. We'll just have someone else instead. I can't even make this shit up. Like, this is humiliating. But yeah, the whole Sith been around for a millennia. Well, Ki-Adi-Mundi, the guy who was supposed to have been born after the Acolyte starts, right? He was supposed to be 70 in the Star Wars prequel timeline, and this is 100 years before, so Ki-Adi-Mundi shouldn't be born yet, but Ki-Adi-Mundi is born and is around for some epic fan service, I guess. He's around, and he witnesses a Sith proclaim himself to be a Sith, and then he still, in the prequels, says, oh, Sith hasn't been seen for a millennia. And no matter how badly you write yourself into a box, you will never, ever, ever get the forgiveness of the people for doing something so god-awful, like introduce a Sith, break the little bit of canon you actually kept. I could go on forever. I told you, I've been doing lore dives on Star Wars specifically on the second channel to properly formulate my thoughts on this shit and educate myself before making a big-ass Star Wars video on why it's actually a glorious franchise that will forever be remembered as the disenfranchised death of a former beautiful nostalgia piece. But the ultimate irony of everything is what Disney did with the Star Wars franchise is exactly what Chancellor Palpatine did with the Republic. To just remind you for a moment, Chancellor Palpatine started a proxy war where he ran the government and controlled the clones on one side, and he was also Darth Sidious, the Lord of the Sith, that controlled all the droids on the other side. The Clone Wars was a war that was operated on two fronts by this man. This giant puppet master controlled both sides of a massive war to destabilize the entire galaxy to then absolutely take over. That is exactly what Disney has been doing with Star Wars for the last 10 years. They are slowly but surely stripping away everything that you thought you loved about Star Wars, destroying it piece by piece, meticulously, from the canon to the established canon to everything else in between. They've already corrupted your favorite characters, and they've corrupted the major themes of the Star Wars series, from Luke to Han Solo to any political framework at all, because there was none of that in their new trilogy. Disney is piece by piece dismantling everything in a massive proxy war where it pulls the strings on all sides, destroying every part of it and destabilizing the entire galaxy, only for it to proclaim itself as a galactic empire, to sit upon its throne of corpses and proclaim itself as the new king of Star Wars. What I declare to be canon is canon, and whether you like the show or not, I am going to paint you as a misogynist, homophobe, instead of actually recognizing your critiques in any way. Disney has locked themselves in an echo chamber where they can only win in their own eyes, where if you love them, then you're on the right side of history, and if you hate them, well, then you're a filthy rebel. Ultimately, Star Wars doesn't know how right it was, telling a story of how freedom of expression dies. Now, I know ultimately it's all a power grab, it's all a money move. Disney thinks, oh shit, Star Wars is a big IP, we can make money out of it. But in my mind, this is just another tragic case of the modern era of artistic vandalism. I've recognized that my second channel, where I do like random deep dive reacting to everything on the planet that ever happened, consuming all lore, is going to end up becoming a massive funnel and an excuse for me to actually deep dive into things that I don't want to dive into in order to break them down for you over here. And honestly, I don't think I'm okay with that. We're doing the Velma dive, boys! Scooby-Doo is a very beloved IP that has existed for a very, very long time. In fact, it's so good and such a possibly easy formulaic system, there's no possible way to mess that up, right? I'm obviously teeing up. No, not right, dude. Not right. Velma exists. Velma, a freaking prequel to Scooby-Doo. How the gang got to know each other. Their high school years, which is rife with weird sexualization of children for some reason. That's right, baby. It's Velma time. And as the only person on the planet that has lived through the viewing of 2 full seasons of Velma, you could check it out. I deep dive, analyze, and debrief, debunk, and freaking poop all over it over the course of literally dozens of hours on my second channel, poured into meticulously stretching its anus so wide I can use it as a hat. But since I'm the only person alive that knows the lore, you're gonna lose your shit when you see how actually humiliating it is. Now, this obviously doesn't even need to be said, but what the original Scooby-Doo is, ultimately, it's a lighthearted mystery-solving gimmick, where you got 5 friends, 5 homies, 5 dude bros that get together and solve mysteries. The mystery could be of any kind. A supernatural spooky thing is going on. Velma says, well, ghosts aren't real, that's stupid. And Raggy says, ruh-roh. Alright, you get my idea, basically. It's a squad of friends doing good people things, being good Samaritans, helping people out, and it ruins the plans of these evil bad guys that's never the bad guy you expect. And they would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for these meddling kids literally doing good for the sake of society's good. It's the most obvious, gimmicky plotline ever. It's not necessarily brilliant in any way, but the writing is just fun, and it's beautiful kids content because ultimately it gets you to think critically and not judge a book by its cover. Every single episode of the original Scooby-Doo series will always have that one guy that always looks like he's the villain right off the bat. Something mystical and mysterious happens. Some people think it's a ghost. Some people think there must be a logical explanation for this. There happens to be this one incredibly creepy fellow that everyone's like, well, that guy's really freaking creepy. He's probably the ghost. And then eventually, through traps and gimmicks and figuring out lots of problem solving and clues, putting deductive reasoning together with using Shaggy as human bait, they do end up managing to catch the guy, unmask him, prove who it is, prove why they did what they did, come up with the motivations because of all their crime-solving shenanigans, and also proving why the guy that was actually mean in the very beginning, well, he was just misunderstood. This is the gimmicky formula for 90% of Scooby-Doo episodes, and honestly, it's a formula because it works. Now, you'll have your deviations from the theme. There are some actual masterpieces in the Scooby-Doo franchise. I think a great example of that is the Call of the Mummy Scooby-Doo thing in Egypt, which was great and managed to throw the entire gimmick on its head because the people that were dressed up as the ghosts were actually Velma and archaeologists trying to protect it from, like, the outsiders. There's always a wholesome message, there's always a wholesome moral, and there's always crime-solving, butt-kinking friendship. And it's beautiful! And then Mindy Kaling happened. Mindy Kaling shows up and is like, yo, I am writing Velma. It'll be a prequel to the actual Scooby-Doo IP that is beloved by Billy Jillians. And we are killing every part of it. First things first, we will diversify the entire cast. Fred is gonna be a white guy, but not any white guy. An incredibly rich, crybaby white guy that is constantly talking about how his penis is small and everything was handed to him in his entire life, and nothing he actually does comes from himself, but it is purely because he is a nepo baby coming from a rich family. Enter Daphne, the Asian kid, whose parents are lesbian cops, and she is also a ninja and a psychopath. Enter Velma, an Indian girl, who is possibly the most unlikable character on the face of the planet, constantly talking about how she hates the patriarchy and society and rich people and religion and anything. Basically anything that basically connotes buzzwords in modern culture for wokeness. Bro, she hates that shit. You got Shaggy, a black kid whose white dad is constantly trying to give him drugs to make him high, and because instead of actually dealing with his issues, because that makes a lot of sense, I suppose. And Scooby, who doesn't actually exist in the prequel. Nope, Scooby is not around in Velma Season 1 or Season 2. Now, aside from the obvious posturing and terrible writing that goes into all of these characters, and why this show is as bad as it is, if you really want to hear, you can watch my endless hours destroying every morsel of content Velma has to offer on my second channel. It's just bad in regards to coming up with the character design and literally ruining the beauty that Scooby-Doo has going for it. Before getting into an incredibly awful writing level, talking about how it's always trying to shove an agenda down your throat about how rich white guy bad, women oppressed, rich white guy bad, and again, religion evil. Bro, they have this whole freaking character arc in Season 2, which is honestly the worst thing ever, where they start slowly realizing that, wow, these insanely psychotic witch people actually have something going for it, but the Catholic Church, oh, that's a scam. That's only there to wring you from your money and use you like a cum rag. Yeah, religion is all fake. Witchcraft, that's real and based. Like, it's constantly contradicting itself with its messaging. Instead of bringing people together closely and not judging a book by its cover, everything is the absolute obvious caricature and stereotype of what they are supposed to be. And here comes the real mind-blowing part. There is zero actual crime solving in the story. Both Velma Season 1 and Season 2 has one villain. The villain is a serial killer going out there. In Season 1, the serial killer went after hot girls, cutting their heads open and stealing their brains. And in Season 2, the serial killer was somebody that was going after rich white guys and cutting their penises off. You can't even make this shit up. Like, honestly, it's humiliating. Now, you know how these crimes are solved? Well, you might be surprised, but it's not through any actual investigative work. Velma likes to put on the hat of a detective the entire show, constantly posturing how she is going to solve the mystery, but literally all the mysteries just get solved themselves. The moment any form of mystery is introduced in the story, it is instantly solved within a half second of that scene taking place, and not due to any due diligence on Velma's actual part. Season 2 was so bad in this regard that they had absolutely no idea who the serial killer was, and then the serial killer kidnaps Velma and unmasks herself in front of Velma. Shocker, it's the woman that hates being mistreated by society. It's constantly trying to promote a message and instantly cucks its own message in the foot by having absolutely no logic actually work in this universe. They keep talking about how there's some male-dominated patriarchy and the women detectives can never actually be promoted to chief. There are 2 women detectives right here. Not only are they women, they're lesbians. They basically win the minority bingo card, and they are the most qualified. In fact, they're the only 2 cops in the entire city, and yet somehow when the election rolls up, they end up giving the position to a white guy. Now, you could make some sort of talk about how, misogyny, patriarchy, blah, 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 all the cringe buzzwords that they like to shove into everywhere, but guess what? These detectives, the lesbian detective people, they pawned off a active serial killer investigation to a high school student because they were scared. Yes, they deserved to not win. Are you joking? Ironically, unlike the original Scooby-Doo, where every single episode and every single movie will have some sort of greater moral, it'll take you through some city and it'll teach you about the architecture of the city and the history of the area and why things ended up the way they did. It'll hone into some historical nuance or some interesting philosophical discussion or some agricultural debate. Every single episode will have some sort of lesson aside from the monster and the twist. That is the bread and butter of Scooby-Doo. Velma does such an awful job promoting every single message that it has, they will accidentally make the only likable character in the entire franchise Fred. Yeah, the rich white nepo baby with the small penis. Imagine doing such a hard time trying to shove every form of diversity and beautiful writing of women and different cultures down your throats to such an insane, disgusting, obviously grotesque extent that the only likable character is the rich white guy. Velma will treat her girlfriend like absolute garbage, and the show will make backward somersault brain farts to make you feel like, oh, how sad it is that society is stacked against her and she is deserving of love. Then Daphne will literally cheat on her girlfriend and go through a more backstep flip-flops trying to come up with how sad it is that Asian women in society are targeted and deserving of love. The show created a situation just full of absolutely horrible people and is trying to make you feel empathy towards them, when in actuality, I feel absolutely nothing towards anyone, except for Fred, the rich white guy, the only guy who actually was abused in his childhood, tried to do better and make something of himself, despite being a massive, incapable dumbass. Yeah, that's right. The rich white guy is unironically the only decent character, and I swear to you, it was done by accident. And you think that is doing a bad job shitting all over the IP of Scooby-Doo? I'm going to tell you 2 more aspects about Velma, because I could literally go on for hours, that will absolutely make you cry and cringe simultaneously. A big aspect of the original Scooby-Doo is the fear. The fact that there is a ghost, and the ghost or whatever creature exists in the story seems supernatural and will cause some sort of fear response. Either it'll be terrorizing the town, or it'll be looking for gold, or it'll be some sort of gimmicky ghost. Everyone thinks it's supernatural. They've angered the freaking mountain deity or whatever, and they don't know what's going on, and they need to do human sacrifices now. But it's up to the meddling kids to figure out that no, it's not actually a supernatural vampire ghost. It's just a dude in a mask wearing goofy suspenders, and he's bungee jumping. And that'll be the formula of every single episode, where A, there's the fear factor and trauma that these characters are implementing on the town that they are terrorizing, as well as on Shaggy and Scooby, because they always bump into them first and they're cowards. And the second thing that they're going to do is they're going to give a completely logical explanation as to why exactly what was going on the entire time. Why the human wore the mask, and aside from rare instances where it actually is supernatural activity, in the most part, it is going to actually have a perfectly feasible, logical explanation to this. These are 2 incredible components of the original Scooby-Doo IP, and these are the 2 components that Velma decided to really ass blast the worst. First, the fear reaction. In the original Velma Season 1, you got Velma dealing with massive trauma. Her mother's gone, and she wanted to solve the mystery, and she was getting PTSD hallucinations from mysteries. Yep, mysteries were her PTSD emotional response, and that got her to start hallucinating things trying to kill her, because mysteries. The only way to stop that is to make her laugh, or for her to get sexually harassed or assaulted. Like, these are the cures to mental health, ladies and gentlemen. You see someone going through a manic episode, freaking losing their mind, seeing hallucinations, starting to choke because someone mentioned the word mystery? Well, give them a non-consensual kiss, ladies and gentlemen. That just might break them out of it. Oh, are you seeing them actually go through some really creepy event where their entire body is contorting because they are seeing something incredibly terrifying? Well, ladies and gentlemen, all you gotta do is you start telling them really funny jokes, and you just get them to laugh away their trauma and fear. And all it needs to do is get Daddy to say, "I love you, Velma," and poof, no longer afraid of mysteries, because somehow that definitely correlates in her mind to her mother's disappearance and mysteries. Yeah, humiliating, right? But it gets worse. At the end of Season 1 of Velma, Shaggy ends up murdering Fred's mom. I know, the show is stupid. Kills Fred's mom, and obviously, he freaks out. And guess what? There's the whole gimmick of how in Scooby-Doo, Shaggy eats a lot. He eats an crazy amount of food. In the actual Scooby-Doo, he'll put like a whole freaking sandwich the size of the Eiffel Tower in his mouth, and he'll just run it off in 3 seconds. Well, let's play up that trope. You see, he has so much PTSD because, he murdered Fred's mom, which is the thing that happens for some reason in Velma, and he gets PTSD attacks. Now, good thing Velma's cured from her PTSD, because that's a thing that just happens easily once you get your dad's love. Well, Freddy over here is not happy, and Shaggy, well, they call him Norville, and he is getting PTSD attacks. And they are creepy, ethereal, ghost-looking figures of Fred's mom attacking him. And the only way to cure it is to take a bite of food. He gets this crazy PTSD situation because he murdered somebody, quickly grabs a sandwich and eats it, and the illusion is gone. No problem, hallucination solved. Psychology 0, Velma 1. Now, aside from being just an absolutely downright travesty in depicting mental health, this is supposed to be some sort of progressive show, literally shitting all over mental health. The second aspect, the whole logical explanation of this gimmick in the original Scooby-Doo, that gets absolutely trounced upon as well. Now, remember the Shaggy hallucinations of Fred's mom coming to him like she was some sort of contorted ghost that he murdered? What if I told you that after he cured his hallucinations, because that's a thing you can do apparently, you can just cure mental illnesses like poof in this show, it's pretty awesome. Guess what happens? The hallucination stays and gains sentience. and it's actually Fred's mom's ghost. Actually, feasibly, visibly, Fred's mom's ghost wandering around trying to possess people, and tries to possess Fred, and Fred basically gives her the middle finger, has this epic moment of growth, chucks her out of his body, and she goes to visible, tangible hell. Like, floor opens, creepy hands come out, pulls her literally into the depths of hell because she's a rich white woman, and that's where they go, obviously. That's the message. Now, to say that this is stupid is by far the understatement of the year. Not only are you giving sentience to hallucinations where it didn't even know it was sentient until suddenly, you know, guy Shaggy was cured, but also, let's not forget the fact that we are operating under the assumption that we don't think that there is anything supernatural going on. This is the logical explanation for all things show. This is the most anti-religious piece of work that has ever existed. There is unironically a slot of 3 episodes at the beginning of season 2 doing nothing but bash religion as a concept. And here we have not only supernatural entities, but physical, tangible, visible evidence of hell. And they still go down this logical evidence thing. Obviously, supernaturality isn't real. And then big twist at the end of Velma season 2. I'm going to spoil it for you because I'm just saving time at this point. Velma actually dies and comes back as a ghost. And that's the big finale conclusion of Velma season 2, the worst show to ever grace television. I have never seen a franchise wipe its ass with the original IP like this Velma. Like, it's a tragedy that they are tying this show that has nothing to do with Scooby-Doo at all, aside from names and gimmicks. Dude, they're not even, the characters are not only are they not the same culture, not only do they not have the same personalities, but they are entirely different people. This is a high school clique that has zero overlap with the actual gang from the Scooby-Doo stories. Tying your name to this IP for relevance sake to only just wipe your butt with it is honestly humiliating and honestly, in my opinion, a vandalism of art. It's something that, yes, we all complained about because, you know, Velma was an actual travesty against man and God. It was one of the worst things ever conceived by humankind. But it should be getting criticism for what it did to a beloved IP and an existing franchise, utilizing it and standing on its corpse purely for the sake of propping itself up only to take a steaming fat load of dump all over it. We should not just be attacking this with vitriol for the sake of hate watching. We should be attacking this for vitriol for the precedent it is setting that it is okay to do something like this. And quite frankly, not enough people are upset about it. It is not okay. Do you realize right now that everything that you love, everything that you are nostalgic to will eventually be reworked into Velma? Because that is the road we're going down. Well, we spent a solid hour on Western bullshittery and adaptations and contorting IP to fit some sort of disgusting ass backwards agenda that does nothing but shoot itself in the foot. So I think it's time to move on to the realm of anime, where this exact same thing is going down, except this time it's not even with consent. Localization is a word that sends shivers down my spine in the year of our Lord 2024. The idea that somehow you have this existing piece of media in Japan, but you want to appreciate it and respect and love this art in another country as well. Unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese, and I want to enjoy my weeaboo shit. I want to enjoy some nice anime cringe now and again, and unfortunately, that means it's got to be either translated to English or dubbed into English, and either one of those two is totally fine by me, so I could consume this media that I genuinely love so much. Now, it needs to get localized to some degree. There are expressions that are going to exist in anime that, quite frankly, are not going to make sense, and I'm not going to have any idea what's talking about. For example, in English, you have a sentence, "Who screwed the pooch?" Now, this is an expression that means, "Who f***ed up?" Pretty basic expression. However, if you were to translate this one-to-one translation to Japan, it would be "who had sex with the dog." Now, honestly, that doesn't make sense at all. And you'll hear that, you'll be like, "Nani? That doesn't fit nothing." So localization would be taking an expression like "who screwed the pooch" and translating into a Japanese, either expression or translation that actually makes sense, "who f***ed up." Literally the most easy to understand concept in the history of time. This is what localization is supposed to be. Now, there are many problems when it comes to bad localization, and I am not going to mention every single bad localization in the history of anime ever, because then we would be watching the entire Crunchyroll collection together for this video, and none of us have time or patience for that. Needless to say, this video is not sponsored by Crunchyroll. Now, some would argue bad dubs are artistic vandalism, and in my opinion, that's not fair. They're trying their best, let's say, and unfortunately the dub doesn't come out as good or emotional or however you like it, like the sub, and unfortunately it is what it is. I don't think that's malicious vandalism. I think that falls more under the either incompetence or level of niche appreciation for the culture. We ain't talking about that today. Honestly, another massive thing that they like doing is whitewashing the actual culture out of Japanese cartoons and stuff in order for the sake of just giving it to modern audiences and giving it to your appreciative Western viewers like the slop that you know they enjoy. Anytime anything remotely religious and Japan-y happens, well, we want to whitewash that shit out of that. We want to freaking blast that. We don't want it to see anything that doesn't suit our culture. And that, I think, is done purely for sales purposes. It's not for some agenda. I think it's laziness, and to be honest, I think it is a travesty. I don't think it's acceptable in any way to start deculturing a piece of media without permission of the original artist just for the sake of selling it easier to people and giving people slop because you don't think that that's how people would appreciate it more. First of all, how dare you? Second of all, you're not allowed to do this. This is illegal. Now, there are a lot of honorifics at the end of Japanese words. Chan, san, sama, stuff like that. Now, that does not necessarily translate well into an English dub. To remove that, I completely understand. That is a language thing. Now, to be fair, I think the fault of this definitely does fall on people like Crunchyroll that are hiring people with very low qualifications, paying them basically nothing in order to translate shit, always threatening that they're just going to get some sort of AI to translate stuff instead so that they don't even need these people that they're hiring. I'm not blaming translators as much as I'm blaming the lazy heavy-handedness of the industry itself, but again, my major qualm here is not even necessarily when it comes to this, and when it comes to malicious changing of media because you think the message is unhealthy for your viewers. And while I think localization in general is a massive topic that could be discussed at massive length at some other time, this topic is not that. This topic is artistic vandalism. It's objective, malicious vandalism. And holy shit, you are about to lose your mind. So I'm gonna go rapid fire right now, okay? I'm gonna give you a bunch of examples of obvious artistic vandalism, and then I'm going to deep dive into one specific case because I'm not here to watch every Crunchyroll anime with you ever. Saint Seiya is one of the most popular anime of all time. It is a massive franchise. It's mostly for kids. If you haven't seen it or heard of it, that's probably why, but it's mega huge and everywhere. It got a 3D adaptation on Netflix, and guess what they did? The character Shun, you know, like the femboy guy, the effeminate male dude, the guy that does not look like your typical buff, masculine male stereotype guy, that dude that is definitely defying your gender norm in every way, being an active form of representation, well, they just turned him into a girl for this show because you can't just have a cast of male characters, you have to have men and women fighting side by side. And they literally just gender swapped them for the sake of inclusivity, baby. There are so many examples of Shun basically sacrificing himself, hugging people in freezing weather to warm them up and stuff, purely for the sake of being a male bonding bro moment where this dude was doing something amazing. I don't know if you want to interpret it as some sort of homoerotic thing or not. Again, not my point. Art is for you to decide what it's like. That's the beauty of art because it can be interpreted in many ways. Well, you can't interpret this in many ways if they change the art. They had to freaking cut the scene because, bro, it's a kid's show. You can't have a man and a woman sitting there naked cuddling for warmth and stuff. No. Let's just cut a massive character moment out of the show because we have to make this dude a woman because you have to have men and women fighting side by side because, bro, it's so obviously for the sake of points that there's a female woman over there, a whole ass female woman. Like, why did you do that? It was for laziness and point gaining. It wasn't for any form of storytelling or anything. It's honestly just performative and embarrassing. Another thing that they like doing is they like inserting and shoehorning modern Zoomer lingo into their anime. My favorite thing is when Naruto looked at Sasuke and said, "That wasn't very skibbity toilet Ohio Riz of you." And then they proceeded to looks max each other for a solid 10 seconds before telling each other that they were a little bit sus among us. Now, there are a billion screenshots that my editor could put on screen literally right now to tell you exactly what I'm saying. I think the most obvious one is the Nagatoro one. There's this anime Nagatoro about this girl that's bullying this dude, and she says, "Well, that's sus." And honestly, you could just say, okay, they were trying to make it goofy and give it flavor because she's a high school girl. They made her say sus. Obviously, sus is not a word that you say in Japan. Like, what the f***? are you doing? But okay, we can live with it. And then you have the head-ass idiot translator on Twitter going onto Twitter to talk about how, oh yeah, I love doing this just to annoy people with my translations. Suddenly, people that are translating things feel like they have some sort of power. The power to dictate what this art should look like, even though you are nothing but a mouthpiece for the original artist. How dare you sully their work with your creativity to piss off people that you feel like you have the right to piss off? You are nothing. Sorry if I got a little bit edgy there, but that's how I feel. I think another one of the most floated around examples of this comes from the Dragon Maid anime. Dragon Maid is the show, cute show, we all love it. It's about a couple of dragon girls. They come to the freaking human world and they become girls. They become cute waifus instead of dragons. You got them in all shapes and sizes. Literally, it's terrifying what the internet will do to some of them. And well, editor, roll the clip.
何ですかその格好。いつも言われるから露出度を抑えたんだ。どうかな。次は体を変えるといいですよ。え？
What are you wearing that for? Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves, so I changed clothes.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Huh?
I do love how Toru asked, "What's with that outfit?" And the response in the original Japanese was, "Well, everyone was always saying something to me, so I tried toning down the exposure. How is it?" Pretty awesome. Pretty great, right? Well, in the Funimation dub, it's, oh, those pesky patriarchal society demands getting on my nerves, so I changed clothes. Within the original sub, Toru responding with, you should try changing your body next. And in the Funimation dub, because, you know, she's a dragon, she can freaking transform. And then in the Funimation dub, the response is, give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back. Oh, that patriarchy, am I right, guys? Yeah, because a couple of dragon girls from an alternate dimension where they're these overpowered deities that have come to Earth to kind of just have a good time every once in a while. Yeah, the patriarchy was really getting on their nerves. Am I right, guys? Now, I want to make it clear, the reason why I'm upset about this stuff isn't because it objectively makes these shows worse. I would have the same issue if it would even make the shows better. Because the thing is, I don't think you as a translator or localizer or whatever the has any right whatsoever to crap on a piece of art written by someone else. You are not being paid as an editor to fix their script. You are being paid as a localizer to let their art and their beautiful work that they put into the world reach more people. That's your job. You are not some gift from God that is here purely to divulge and spread your freaking ideology onto the masses, whether you are a good person or not. Every time localizers get confronted with this sort of thing, you have the most insane reaction from all of them. Watching Asmongold react to these morons backtrack and talk about why they actually are correct and because white people are actually a blight on society, which is why they have the right to ruin this piece of art created by an Asian man for the sake of what? Spreading your agenda? How dare you?
I'm kind of scared to ask this question now because I don't want to bring down the room. So
okay.
This is
directed
at Jamie, but all of you can answer.
Go,
all
Jamie,
of you
go. I'm
have,
excited
like,
about it. Like,
so
I'm
Funimation
Jamie.
has come under, let's call it, criticism for how they choose to adapt their scripts for
Like
a couple
unnecessary
of shows.
hate. Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Oh, unnecessary hate. Got it.
you unfairly.
Thank you.
So how would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?
To the
particularly-
criticism, like, I have a vagina, deal with it. Like, I'm a funny woman. We are all talented, funny, powerful women. We are out here. It's going to happen. Deal with it. I'm sorry you're not getting laid. It's not about you. Move on. That's my reaction.
So this is a person that made the comment, and they said, just remember, if there is there are any line changes in any anime, any script, anything ever that offend anyone who unironically uses a term like SJW and feminist agenda, I wrote them. I wrote them all. Yep. Well, now you're getting replaced by a robot. So I hope you had fun. I hope it was enjoyable. Yeah, there it is.
Now, I feel like a whole H-bomber guy ass type guy right now, but one of the major reasons why I wanted to do this video was because of the next little part that I'm going to talk about in my anime atrocities chapter. Lovely Complex and Jello Apocalypse. Jello Apocalypse is a YouTuber who has made a lot of videos over a very long time. He has a very respected career, and that's not there anymore, baby! Yeah, probably gonna get into some sort of drama here, but you know what? I'm gonna do this freaking topic justice. Lovely Complex is an anime that I watched a while back based on the recommendation of a friend of mine. It was one of his favorite anime. He recommended it to me. I watched it and it was very cute. It's a story about a very tall girl and a dude who fall in love, and it's very wholesome. It's like, even though she's tall and she felt like she couldn't get a guy because she's super tall and he's just some random douchey dude, they fell in love, and it was beautiful. It's a pretty wholesome story, all in all. I'm not going to lie and say I remember every single story beat that ever happened. It was not my ultimate cup of tea, but it was still pretty cute. And this got a dub. The dub was managed by Jello Apocalypse, the YouTuber who did the So This Is Basically series, where he basically made a series where you could sarcastically make fun of different pieces of media and stuff. And honestly, while I do love me some criticizing media, especially in a sarcastic setting, the way this man takes pot shots at stuff like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Adventure Time purely because he doesn't understand the medium and he just has some sort of blatant disrespect for the creators, it's despicable. Now, I know you could say that I'm just reading into it and that's just supposed to be a comedic thing, but Jello Apocalypse is constantly talking about on Twitter how JoJo's is bad, and if you like it, you have objectively shit taste. It was created by a shit guy, probably. To quote Jello Apocalypse's tweet, "Please stop making JoJo video essays. I'm so tired of seeing the psychology of ex-villain," you're welcome, by the way, I think he's talking about me, "and Iraqi secret reasoning recommended in my sidebar. JoJo is an oil slick. It's volatile and fun to look at, but if you assume it has depth and dive into it, you'll hurt your head." And he went on tirades about how JoJo's is actually bad and ugly, and believe it or not, that was reflected entirely in So This Is Just Basically JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Listen, I get not liking something. I get criticizing something, but saying that a piece of art is objectively bad is not exactly the direction I would go if I was A, in the industry of adapting art, like this dude is because he was working on the adaptation for Lovely Complex, or B, creating art. Dude made his own shows on his channel, which I watched Epithet Erased, and I thought it was kind of mid, not gonna lie, but again, that's a personal take. So he goes on this whole tirade talking about his experience in adapting Lovely Complex. He said he had no passion for it. It was not being paid well for it, but he still was gonna do it. He rewrote a bunch of parts of it to add jokes and make it actually funny. He changed a bunch of the romantic scenes because he's the only guy that knows how to write romance on the planet, apparently. That is a quote, by the way. He literally said that, "I think I'm the only guy that knows how to write a good romance these days." Quote, literally a quote. He thought it was a little bit problematic when it came to the relationship of tall girl and douchey guy. He thought he treated her not nicely at certain points in the story, even though this is the literal tsundere story where they originally hate each other and they end up falling in love with each other. He still went out on a limb to talk about how, yup, it's a problematic relationship and therefore I changed a lot of the dialogue and stuff to make them sound nice to each other the whole time because we need our protagonist to be respectful. We can't have him be a bit of a douche. He can't treat women like that. He ends up changing a ton of stuff. He had nothing but disrespect for the original piece of art that he was adapting, which, holy crap, why are you doing this? You're making millions on YouTube. I think it's purely to stick it to the anime fans because I'm going to make this have a really shitty adaptation because it was really shitty and I'm going to change it all. And there was this whole moment at the very end of Lovely Complex where the actual mangaka, the creator of Lovely Complex, did like a whole self-insert thing where she put herself in the story for just one scene at the very end of the show. And because he thought that she was so disrespectful in the way that she wrote these characters and it was so not progressive of her, he managed to find a way to try to cut her out of the actual story that she wrote. He went on this whole tirade talking about how she sounds like she's just your average person that says, "I hate drama" on Twitter, but then goes ahead and starts a whole lot of drama. When she self-inserted her at the end as some fashion designer for just some one-off random scene at the very end of Lovely Complex, saying that "I'm gonna make you look good," and that was the one line that the mangaka self-insert character had, and Jello Apocalypse said, "Well, you failed at making her look good. Your writing is trash." So then, Brendan Blabber, the Jello Apocalypse, the big name attached to the project, not only did he want to cut her out, but when they told him no, he made them a threat. He said, if you do not cut out her line praising herself at the end, her own line, the creator of this piece of art, if you don't cut out her own line of this because this is a problematic work, I quit. What? Literally blackmailing them and extorting them into absolutely bastardizing a piece of art written by somebody else? Who the hell are you? Aside from the sheer disrespect, you're not getting the show you think you're getting. If you wouldn't pay attention to Twitter discourse, or you wouldn't be watching a video exactly like this one, you have no idea what you're actually watching. You could have just watched Lovely Complex. You could not have known at all that half of what you watched was completely the work of some random narcissistic YouTuber, instead of actually the piece of art that your friend recommended to you because it touched them in a very emotional way. They kill the evidence by publishing it because the vast majority of people that actually consume the piece of media will have absolutely no idea how bastardized it actually is. But the more and more this happens, and the more the actual anime industry, especially in the West, is going to have a stranglehold by people like these Crunchyroll humans that like changing things to fit some sort of agenda, the less authentic stories you are going to be receiving from the rest of the world. There is so much beautiful art out there, and so much of it is just going to become completely tainted, changed, and warped for the sake of selling you something that does not exist. A lot of people feel like their message is the objectively correct message, and because it's the objectively correct message, it gives them some sort of moral divine authority to with and ruin the art created by talented people that have a message and a emotion that they want to share with the world, and makes it feel like you have some sort of divine right to choose what art gets consumed and how it affects the people that consume it. As a consumer, you have to recognize that everything you're getting is going through the hands of being tainted by millions of people and constantly trying to one-up each other with different moral high grounds and ethical platitudes that you're not going to be receiving the thing that you want to be receiving. It is a net L for the entire world, and it is the death of art as you know it. Art is something that can be created by anyone. I can create art. You can create art. And by doing that, you are putting something into the world that could touch millions of people. Especially with the internet that we can access anything, you have no idea how beautiful and widespread true art can actually be. But with the overly pasteurized, corporatized slot machine that is modern entertainment, that beautiful, true art is gonna be lost, and suddenly, the only true art you're gonna see nowadays is a meme on Twitter, because they ain't changing those. You can see these relatively mediocre YouTube videos like I make, and yeah, I think that I enjoy them. I'm sure some people like them. But the true big works of art that are worked on by dozens and dozens of people could just be snuffed out because of a wild, disturbing, disingenuous, greedy company, just for trying to promote some sort of agenda that you may or may not agree with, and they feel like they have the ethical high ground to not give a shit. And speaking of, we're working about getting to probably the worst part of this entire essay. I took distinct care to specifically be talking about specific series, shows, and movies that were absolutely butchered in the good name of pushing some sort of agenda. And I made sure that that was the absolute bulk of the video purely because ultimately you have to realize it's happening before recognizing the villains. And while obviously there is no centralized eye of Sauron that's dealing with all this stuff, I do think that there are definitely a lot of contributing factors. The largest of them being Twitter activism. A nebulous, anomalous force that no one can actually possibly comprehend the great powers or fears that they actually hold upon the throats of man. But because of these nebulous concepts flying around, somehow, somewhere, a couple of bullshit ass companies managed to somehow take powers in the ass crack of society, breathing the Twitter fumes that give their lives purpose and meaning. And they found a way to become the viruses to manipulate the flesh puppets that is modern media, contorting art into works of absolute debauchery. You see, I went really hard analyzing various series until this point from different perspectives, but you don't understand how long the list could be if I just went for broad abominations in this atmosphere. The Halo TV show being an abomination. The Witcher being such a travesty that Henry Cavill had to literally seppuku himself to get off the stage. Bro, The Witcher was not even about The Witcher anymore. It took The Witcher to make The Witcher, not even the main character of the show, focus on every other character in the universe that happens to not be a white guy, instead of The Witcher, and surprise, everyone hated it. But the real villains are not the individuals that are bastardizing these art. No, those people are the mere flesh putlights, the cum socks, the goddamn symptoms of the disease, but not the disease itself. They are the tumors that are created by a metastasized cancer. But the cancer? That's the outrage farming flesh balls that make believe they have some semblance of morals or ethics that they try to trounce down everyone that disagrees with them. We're talking about the corporate calamities, baby. The best known of them, Sweet Baby Inc. From Assassin's Creed Valhalla all the way to Suicide Squad, Sweet Baby Inc. has been a blight on the goddamn gaming industry. For those of you that are unfamiliar with their reign of terror, you will be surprised that they are just the ones that got exposed until now and got harassed in the public forum, that got humiliated and shamed the way they all should be humiliated and shamed. Sweet Baby Inc. is a diversity inclusion consulting company. You probably have no idea what that even means, to be honest. And I envy you if you don't. But what that is you basically have a game that wants to release, let's say it's Suicide Squad, for example. They want to release their game. They had people working on it, lots of time, lots of effort went into this new game, and it's gonna be great. But the thing is, Sweet Baby Inc. is sitting there twiddling their thumbs and saying, well, if you're not inclusive enough, well, we might have to try to cancel you on Twitter and get you harassed. You know all the harassment that happened when Hogwarts Legacy came out because they were somewhat associated with J.K. Rowling, who's not very beloved in the public forum these days? Well, we're gonna do that to you. And I don't think you'll be able to withstand the backlash. So unless you want to make sure that you're not gonna get absolutely canceled and railed by us activists that are being active to promote something or other, you have no choice but to pay us a fee to consult you and talk about what shit you have to cut out of your game and what crap you have to add to it to create a homunculus that somehow the public may not cancel you and humiliate you for. And you know what? It freaking worked. 99% of these game companies or creators of any merit do not want to get canceled in public for something random. And if paying Sweet Baby Inc. a couple of dollars for them to basically protect you from the public backlash, well, we might as well do that. Because believe it or not, the top corpo juggernauts in any of these games, they don't give a shit about diversity and crap. They just want to sell games. And they feel like having a Sweet Baby Inc. checkmark might actually help them not get canceled by someone else, and therefore, maybe can help them sell more games. I feel like there is a silent, or maybe not even so silent, extortion campaign done by a lot of these diversity, inclusion, lovey-dovey acceptance consulting companies that basically kind of force and heavy-hand different corporations into working with them, or they will come at you later for just not being a nice guy enough. And under the threat of this public scrutiny and shaming, they buckle. And Sweet Baby Inc. swoops in and ruins your game. The way Sweet Baby Inc. actually got exposed and harassed and blasted by the public is honestly one of the most hilarious Streisand effects of all time. There was someone on Steam who made basically a group called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, where he would talk about all the games that actually use Sweet Baby Inc. when it came to creating their games and helping and consulting to diversify their cast or whatever. And surprise, literally all the big flops of the AAA industry of recent happened to work with Sweet Baby Inc. Well, not a lot of people took notice. Maybe had like 10,000 followers at the time. And then Sweet Baby Inc. themselves, the goddamn cuckolds of the industry that are sitting in their chair and watching the action go down, go onto Twitter, start harassing the guys who made the freaking Steam list of games that worked with them, targeted them with harassment, basically threatened Steam to try to deplatform them and get rid of all their games or something because they are harassing them and shit. They spread all sorts of slanderous garbage about this. This is a massive drama, huge situation that happened over a long period of time, and they Streisand affected other people to know this was going on, look into this list, and currently that Sweet Baby Inc. detected list on Steam has 400,000 people on it that have all joined the Steam list and are now staunch Sweet Baby Inc. haters, as they should be, because this company frankly should not exist. It is not up to you to point fingers at different people's works of art and feel like you have the God-given right to f*** around with it. Intentions are pure or otherwise. Maybe I'm just a cynical bitch, but I think it's otherwise. After Sweet Baby Inc. finally got under the microscope, everybody talked about it. I talked about it on my second channel extensively. My boy Mudahar covered it a lot. My other boy Asmongold covered it a lot. This became a huge, massive, shit disturbing talking point where they kept exposing themselves again and again and again with all these old interviews of them popping up talking about how, well, they just hate white people and stuff. It's as simple as that.
And something that is locked in place. So something that does not want to change and something that is locked in place. So despite like the changing face of audiences, despite the changing face of conferences like this one, we still look at our core demographics and say, okay, they're white, cis, hetero males. And we cater almost exclusively to them. And the problem is that we don't just cater to them like, you know, here's something that we think you'll enjoy. We cater to them the way that we cater to like a picky baby. We feed them the same thing that we know that they love, and we keep on feeding it. We're like, here you go, you love it, eat this, eat this, eat this. So that then when they get anything else, they react as a picky baby would, which is be like, whoa, no, thank you. I do not want this. And we've actually done this so long that what we're doing is creating an entire nation of picky babies. And
so this clip right here is kind of wild. Like it's again, I think the big problem is if you're like a normal person and you look at shit like this, specifically isolating the whole white cis hetero male crowd.
If you're a creative working in AAA, which I did for many, many years, put this stuff up to your higher ups. And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want.
Right, and so let me explain really what that terror is. 5 tweets that go viral, and then nobody actually cares after that.
The thing that they don't seem to understand when criticism is coming their way, it's not criticism coming from the other side. Ever since this all went down, people like, I don't know, me, Mudahar, and Asmongold, what a coincidence, it's hilarious, all started getting called these insane alt-right Nazi titles on Twitter and shit, simply because we are fighting for art to not get butchered, contorted, and perverted by a greedy-ass company that wants to contort and extort other companies into pushing their agenda, or else they are gonna get slandered in the public eye. Damn. Instead of defending yourself, much easier to just call your opponent a Nazi, right? Because if you just dehumanize your opponent, well then, no one's gonna listen to them. Am I right? I'm not gonna go into this whole 30-minute debacle about Sweet Baby Inc. right now. You could check out literally a billion videos on the internet covering this, from me to Mudahar to Asmongold and everywhere. But what you may not be aware of is the fact that Sweet Baby Inc., once again, is not the evil juggernaut here. They are not the raid boss. They are not even one of the demon generals. They are just a mid-rank dungeon mob, and there's a million more of them. Allow me to introduce you to Gamer X. Gamer spelt with a gay in it. There was this other massive situation recently where Pokemon went into the trash can, and they decided to update everyone's avatars to turn everyone fat and ugly. It was a pretty huge buff, honestly. It was pretty great. Y'all remember that? You probably don't. It wasn't a major deal. It wasn't a huge thing or anything. All they did is simply tweet out that we want you to look more like your avatars, and then they morphed every single one of them to look like Nurgle from Warhammer lore. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, so Pokemon Go made a uppity. That doesn't matter, does it? Well, it kind of does, because it seems like this was very pushed by Gamer X, another Sweet Baby Inc., just with a different freaking name. It's the same company, and they've been doing this to tons of games and media that everyone's been hating on for all their wacky changes, butchering all forms of customization and trading it into this gelatinous blob of love and acceptance. They just diagnosed every person playing all their games with Lizzo and went on with their life. Apparently, a lot of very borderline illegal shenanigans happened in Gamer X recently. And, you know, honestly, this is not the place for that. I'm not here to call out individuals that are scumbags that are working with these inclusivity companies. You know, these moral arbiters of right and wrong that happen to have committed lots of crimes, like the Sweet Baby Inc. guys that said death to all Jews. I mean, just because he said that, it doesn't mean he shouldn't be a moral arbiter. Am I right, guys? Or what about the freaking Sweet Baby Inc. guy that decided to DDoS a women's charity event event in the past and admitted it publicly on Twitter. No, we're not covering any of that. This is not personal attacks on people that work in these companies. We are investigating the disease, not the symptoms. But whether it's Sweet Baby Inc. or Gamer X or probably another dozen completely irrelevant, useless companies that are doing the same exact thing, butchering art for the sake of nothing and the sake of an ideology that they don't deserve to push upon you. And while it's bad in Western media for sure, and butchering the Western media 1,000,000,000%, it's a travesty and it is an affront against art. It is vandalism and it should be treated as such. The lengths these companies like to go to when it comes to butchering propaganda from other countries, like, you know, a cartoon about children playing card games. You have no idea how far these sleazeballs go because they feel like they will never get caught. Crunchyroll is a very, very popular anime streaming service. It's been around for a very, very long time, and they shame people constantly for pirating anything. They will sponsor YouTubers to make anti-piracy videos all the time because they want to shame you into feel like you are not supporting the very, very small, tiny niche anime industry. How often do you have people talking about in their sponsors of their videos, especially about 5 years ago, this video is sponsored by Crunchyroll, everybody. Big shockaroony. Definitely go to Crunchyroll to support the actual industry. Do you love anime? Well, this is a niche hobby, and support the industry by going to Crunchyroll. They're gonna take all that money you give them and probably make their own anime, like called freaking High Guardian Spice, where they proudly tap themselves on the back and proudly roar into the air as they say, "Don't worry guys, we have not hired a single straight white guy on the entire production team of this because we care about not good content." That's not what they care about, because you'd think they'd hire people based on their qualifications, not skin color. That actually sounds kind of racist, I'm not gonna lie. Aside from the constant and blatant changes in localization, subtitling, and all that stuff, this is just insane. For them to try to convince us that we need to support Crunchyroll because they don't believe in piracy and piracy is theft, but you also don't own the stuff you pay for. If you don't own what you pay for, then piracy ain't theft. And also, don't sit there, twiddle your thumbs, and make it feel like we have a moral imperative to support you because you're supporting our hobby if you're gonna take our funds and create absolute garbage out of it like Hard Guardian Spice. And the real shockaroony is, Crunchyroll started as a piracy anime website. It's only when they felt like a more lucrative route they could actually take is through actual licensing that they went full 100% kosher and decided to go all this entire reign of justice route. Crunchyroll, the second Space Marine Legion of the Imperium of Man, ladies and gentlemen. And this is, again, just a symptom. I don't want you to think that this is the disease. They are not the disease. Let me introduce you to Discotek. Discotek is a smaller, less successful Crunchyroll that works on retro anime and retro games and a lot more niche topics and stuff like that. And I did a deep dive on Discotek specifically on my second channel, Nuxanor. It'll be linked in the description if you want. Dimitri Monroe made a really freaking good video about that. Again, I want to make clear this entire segment of the video is not going after these individual companies as much as pointing out that this is a blight on society and art. Remember that big lovely complex change I was talking about earlier with Jello Apocalypse that basically ended his entire career in the anime industry by backstabbing and talking about how he hated the source material and how he made it the transiest anime of all time, all proud of himself that he would take characters and just change their genders for the sake of inclusivity and shit? Well, enough of that. Because you see, Discotek actually has been doing this all the time. Literally all the time. And when Jello Apocalypse got exposed for this, Discotek, the people that have literally been doing this for the last 10 years, threw Jello Apocalypse under the bus and made it seem like he was the only guy that was doing that, when in actuality it is the doctrine of their entire corporation. Every time someone in an anime says, "Hey, you're flat-chested," you know, like the old school anime insult, they'll always change that to, "You're a tomboy," because we can't insult the flatness of women's chests in this company because it's wrong, it's immoral. They kept doing interviews and working with Anime News Network doing interviews with people that created Megalobox, for example, and translated a Megalobox interview into the guy talking about how the main character suffers and trying so hard to not fall into the trap of toxic masculinity. That was how they translated the interview. And people were like, there's no way the creator of Megalobox gave a shit about and talked about toxic masculinity. And they denied it. They said it's not true, and we're not releasing the Japanese interview, but it's not true. You're calling it's lies. It's literally all lies. Anyway, they later ended up revealing the Japanese interview, and no, he was not talking about toxic masculinity at all. He was just talking about how his dad was a deadbeat dad, and he didn't want to be a deadbeat dad type guy too. which is not the same thing. And I can go into more and more and more and more examples of all of these things, about Discotech, about Crunchyroll, about Sweet Baby Inc., about GamerX, and all these things that they've all been doing, but they all have one thing in common. They have zero artistic integrity, and whether that's due to some sort of massive ideological push where they feel like they have the God-given right to destroy the art created by other people for the sake of propaganda, or there is a massive monetary or public social group incentive to doing this shit, the point is it's happening and you should not be okay with it. Here's what my boy, George R.R. Martin, said about this exact thing.
That was all back in 2022. Very little has changed since then. If anything, things have gotten worse. Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take... Like, they think they can do a better job than him. No, you can't. Eager to take great stories and make them their own. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl, Ursula K. Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Raymond Chandler, Jane Austen, or well, anyone. No matter how major a writer is, no matter how great the book is, there's always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do it better. Eager to take this story and improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better, though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. It's like, you think that you could do it better than Tolkien? Just stop, bro. Like, stop. What are you doing? GRM hates fan fiction? Paste.
I've long been an opponent of fan fiction, taking characters and putting them together in unlikely sexual situations. You know, what I don't know doesn't hurt me, so if people want to do that, fine, but don't send it to me and expect me to prove it or something. Now, fan art, that's fine, that's a whole nother thing.
Rings of Power, bro, like guaranteed he was probably mad watching Rings of Power. It is like the peak of hubris that you think you are some random screenwriter. They announced the show, your name isn't even in the motherfucking trailer. They don't even know who the fuck you are. Meanwhile, the dude that wrote a book is getting paid 8 figures for this shit, and you think that you're gonna do it better than him. Well, why aren't they buying your book? That's the power of ego. Yeah, that's what it is.
Zero, absolutely zero delineation from the standard is tolerable. It's not about any individual change that is necessarily as bothersome as the fact that it is happening on a much broader scale. If you don't scream now, you will have no mouth to scream later. Vandalism of art should not be tolerated, period. And it becomes so much worse than that. Once there is some sort of moral religion in regards to following a certain ideology to the point that you're able to act as a missionary of this ideology and enforce it down the throats of every person listening, even if it is at the cost of their art and their life that they've put into it, then who knows where it will stop. We've discussed a lot of the West. We've discussed a lot about our perspective and our lifestyle in regards to this artistic vandalism that's going on. But you may not be aware of how massive of an issue this actually is. It is a worldwide spreading issue because when you deface someone's heart, you dehumanize them. When all of a sudden your ideology is the most important thing and nothing else matters compared to spreading it, then who knows exactly how far that will go. Well, I can only give you a couple examples for something like this, but I think the most obvious one that basically proves that they will stop at nothing, let me introduce you to pre-Elon Musk Twitter. I know, crazy, toxic shit coming from Twitter, it's unheard of. Pre-Elon Musk Twitter in Japan had a very interesting trending page. It was constantly trending with lots of very important issues like toxic masculinity, like Me Too, like all sorts of different identity politics, and honestly, very massively discussed topics that quite frankly should be discussed, I guess, according to my very personal random bias that shouldn't matter to anybody on the planet at all. Twitter's Japan trending section was talking about every single social issue and discussion going on in the US of A, ladies and gentlemen. For a long time, people were questioning whether the actual trending page was a legitimate trending page that just decided on what was the most trending topic based on discussion in a given region, or if the trending page was somehow crafted, maybe, handcrafted by the corporate overlords, trying to push certain food in front of you to consume. This has been a theory, but completely unprovable in every single way, until Elon Musk bought Twitter. He bought Twitter and he made a lot of really shitty changes, I'm not gonna lie. There are more bots on the platform than ever. You literally cannot open Twitter in public without seeing titties flying at your face. But with all the whack jobs and insane radical nutcases that Elon Musk has unleashed upon Twitter, free speech is kind of free now. And the Japanese trending page is completely different than it once was. Ironically, none of that social topic discussion things touches the Japanese trending page, and it's purely talking about Japanese politics. Big shock, I know, that's crazy. As well as anime, or manga, or idol culture, or other stuff that I'll never even begin to understand. But the point is, it does not look like it used to. It almost feels like the Japanese public was being artificially fed food that they did not want to eat. Guys, that kind of sounds like a propaganda war. Like, I don't want to get all Cold War spooked up or anything, but this sounds like the invasion of communism into America in the 1930s and 40s. Like, I am scared to see the lengths that this could go to, and if this could even make irreparable damages and gaps between different countries and cultures. That's scary, and it ain't bringing people together. So to answer my question just a few moments ago of how far will they go, I think they'll go as far as they can. And the minute you give them a finger, they will take a hand. Now they're changing a joke that calls someone flat-chested into calling them a tomboy, even though that's not a comparable thing at all and didn't make sense in context. Or maybe you'll have a cute girl from Dragon Maid saying how she hates the patriarchal society or something like that. All right, that's not really changing my life. But who knows how far this will go? Where will this end? And if we are accepting of things that are completely irrelevant, like the freaking Dragon Maid girl saying patriarchy, which is like a non-issue in a vacuum, then, well, are we opening the gates of hell upon us for some future where all art ends up vandalized and warped to form and follow the mainstay opinion of a insane group of people that have a stranglehold on the industry? Now, unfortunately, this is not where the Japanese segment of this video ends. When I was on stream looking into the discotheque stuff and the lovely complex dub and stuff, I was hit by a really terrible, awful piece of news, and I am still shaking to my core. So I'm just gonna play my actual reaction to a very tragic event that happened in Japan, very much on this topic. Roll the clip.
Despite me seeing this largely as a positive incident, for both the attention it garnered and what it revealed to us, today I'm going to have to leave you on a more somber note than recent. While out of the hands of all those involved at Discotheque, the timing of this event could not have been worse. For those unfamiliar, Lovely Complex is a very famous entry in the shoujo genre, whereas just 2 weeks prior to this incident, another shoujo artist, Hinako Ashihara, took her own life. I don't bring this up simply to elicit an emotional response. The reasoning for her death ties directly into today's discussion, as right before her passing, Ashihara protested the TV adaptation of her series Sexy Tanaka-san.
A shoujo writer killed herself out of protest for a bastardized adaptation. And then a month later, Discotheque comes here and bastardizes another shoujo adaptation? You've got to be kidding me. That's dystopian. What?
Prior, she was promised by the producers that the series would be handled with care and with little change, but this didn't come to pass. She felt immense frustration at the liberties taken with her own creation that she poured her heart into, with the note the police found after she passed further compounding these reasons for why the event took place. Ken Akamatsu, a member of the House of Counselors and author of Love Hina, had this to say on the incident. Something that shouldn't have happened. In media mixed projects of manga and novels, this has been a frequent occurrence for a long time. Original developments and character changes that the original author did not want have become a problem. I think it's becoming less common. However, there's still a lack of thoroughness in terms of prior explanations and contracts regarding secondary use. This is a problem for the original author, but the original author also needs a place to go for advice and knowledge, in case they're not satisfied with the explanation beforehand or something happens later that is different from what was promised. Though I don't wish to dismiss the fact that there was certainly more going on with Ashihara that would lead her to commit such an act.
Well, yeah, obviously you're not going to say that it was purely the adaptation's fault, but it definitely contributed. They butchered her piece of art. She put her soul and love into it, and they absolutely butchered it after promising that they wouldn't. And she ended up doing the unthinkable. This is the same as the localization shit. What is even going on?
It still shines a light on why I care so heavily about these things. This affects people. It's something these creators put their all into. their heart, their soul, their dreams, and their ideas. Which makes it all the more ridiculous that Discotek's statement was not only a masterclass in gaslighting, but those in charge like Justin Savakis were actively mocking all those concerned on his social media. While Ashihara's situation—
He was? Next time an I don't even know what that means. Crowd tries to insist that there's a wokeification conspiracy where us translators are injecting politics into stuff, I'm gonna point and say, nah, if we did, we'd get fired. Just like Jello Apocalypse. Oh my god, you gaslighting piece of shit. You've all been doing that. You've literally all been doing that. Anti-localization, got it. You've all been doing that. Localization in the good old days changed Brock's rice balls to jelly-filled donuts, okay? Which I think also is obviously bullshit and stupid, but what are you doing?
Like Justin Savakis were actively mocking all those concerned on his social media. While Ashihara's situation shows it's not just an issue that affects solely localization, it is certainly an issue.
It's adaptation in general. If you're adapting a work, how can you do this? You're adapting a work that someone put their heart and soul into. And your job was literally supposed to adapt it to another audience, either a live action audience or another language. That's your job. Your job isn't to pervert it. Dude, this is despicable. This is fucking awful. And it ended with this poor girl taking her life because of this. What are you doing? What is wrong with you? Art is someone's thought child. It's something that someone created. They put themselves in this art. To vandalize it is to deface them and to dehumanize them. And it's awful to see literal, actual manifestation of something so awful and tragic. And it hurts my heart every time I even think of that story. I couldn't bring myself to record it myself again a second time, so forgive me for just showing the clip of me actually reacting to that news the first time I heard it. The full video's on Nuxanor. But in a world today where the artists get the short end of the stick every single time, and the psychos with the loudest voice on the internet are the ones that actually manage to walk away with the bag and success, that's not a world I want to live in, bro. No amount of culture matters to these people. No amount of personal pain and suffering inflicted matters to these people. From Henry Cavill walking away to The Witcher, or George R.R. Martin, obviously traumatized by the fact that Game of Thrones up the last few seasons of their TV show because his books didn't finish. A lot of the actual artists end up becoming victims in these stories, but since the artist is not the one with the loudest voice, the artist is not regarded. They're paid into silence and threatened with harassment and threats for not being inclusive enough. And suddenly, you're left with a homogenized paste of absolute shit because the modern gaming industry is dog shit and it's garbage because no one's willing to take any risks, and it's much safer just to go the route of paying Sweet Baby Inc. to deform and turn your shit into a homunculus. The fact that Netflix is so used to and so comfortable this entire concept of just changing shit for the sake of public acceptance and maybe good PR or something, that they decided to change actual historical fact about Cleopatra when they released the Cleopatra show on Netflix, it goes to show how far the brain rot has gotten. Did you know that Cleopatra was so historically inaccurate based on them basically casting a whole bunch of different races for the people in the cast of Cleopatra that Egypt sued Netflix over it? But somehow the lesson is never learned, and evolution is never taken, and progress is never made. Ultimately, I don't feel like this video is going to necessarily change anything on a grand scale, but the truth is, it doesn't have to. I need to change 2 people's minds with these videos, and they can change 2 more people's minds. Ultimately, we are at our strongest when we are together, okay? We're living in a society where the fix your art meme is no longer a meme, but it is the discernible reality of modern art. An entire trade based on lies and facades, where you never know what actual art is and what value actually exists in anything, where its natural beauty comes from, or what exactly was perverted and warped from the source. If you notice, here and on Nuxanor, I have been devoting lots of times to indie projects, trying my best to support as many of them as I can. I may or may not even be working on one myself, who knows? It's pretty exciting. I want to live in a world where pieces of art are treated with the same integrity as Michelangelo's statue of David. And honestly, I hope together we can convince people that that's a world they should want to live in too. If you like this absurdly long deep dive, feel free to check out my Abominable Sins of Twitch deep dive, going into the abominable sins on Twitch. I know, crazy. It's exactly like it sounds. Oh my god. Consider subscribing for more sporadic, very, very complicated and long thought out topics instead of just the average slop. Daily Slop is on my second channel, Nuxanor. I post twice a day there. The vibes are immaculate. And remember to stay weird, fam.